If you listen to pretty much any modern music today,
Anything, really.
yeah, anything, whether you're into like the samples in hip hop, the rhythms of pop, or even rock music with those driving guitars,
Hmm.
you are listening to a sound that was, it was absolutely built on the foundation of jazz. It's
Yeah,
the core language.
that's so true. When we talk about jazz, we aren't just talking about a type of music.
No.
We're talking about a huge story that's all wrapped up in rhythm.
Yeah.
It's a story about American culture, about struggle, and, about a real push for social change.
It's like a history book you can dance to.
Exactly.
So that's what we're going to trace for you today. We want to see how this sound started as the voice of a community facing incredible difficulty and how it grew into this worldwide language of creativity and freedom. So let's just start at the very beginning. Where did this all spark?
We have to go south,
Yeah.
all the way back to the late 19th century in the United States. And the music was created, for the most part, by African-American musicians who were sort of weaving together their cultural heritage with the instruments that were actually available to them.
And the absolute epicenter, the one place we have to talk about, is New Orleans.
The ultimate cultural melting pot. That mixing was everything.
Right. Think about it. New Orleans had this really complex history with French and Spanish rule, but then you add in these incredible African and Caribbean traditions.
And that mix meant that cultures blended there way more freely than anywhere else in the U.S. at the time. It created this perfect environment for a new sound to just take root.
So what was that sound exactly? What were they fusing together?
Well, they took these complex, syncopated rhythms from traditional African music and then combined them with the way notes are organized in Western music.
What we call European harmonic structures.
Exactly. It was this beautiful and sometimes difficult marriage of cultures expressed through sound.
And that early sound, it really reflected the community's reality, right? A lot of difficult experiences, sure, but also this incredibly resilient, joyous spirit.
Absolutely.
And something that always gets me is the instrumentation. They weren't using, expensive orchestra instruments.
Not at all.
They often used brass instruments like trumpets and trombones because they were just around. They were easy to get, sometimes really cheap from military bands after things like the Spanish-American War.
So they were just using what they could get their hands on.
Yeah, turning surplus into art.
And that necessity, it just drove innovation. Two defining elements came out of that early period that still define jazz today. The first is improvisation.
A word we hear all the time.
Right. But in jazz, it means making up music right on the spot. It's like having a conversation with the other musicians, but without words. You're all contributing ideas in real time.
And the second one is swing.
Ah, yes. Swing.
You just know it when you hear it. It's that powerful rhythmic feel that you just can't ignore. It's not a straight beat. It has this little push and pull that almost forces you to move.
A kind of playful bounce to the beat. And these early bands, they played everywhere.
Everywhere.
Parades, funerals. You'd see a band playing a slow, sad tune on the way to a burial, and then a really celebratory, upbeat song on the way back.
Wow.
They played in social clubs, too. There was a famous district called Storyville, which it provided steady work. Bands could really sharpen their skills there night after night.
And the city's location helped spread the music, right?
Definitely. New Orleans was a massive port city, so sailors and travelers were constantly passing through, and they acted like these early musical ambassadors, helping that new sound sort of leak out to the rest of the country.
Okay, so before jazz could really stand on its own, it needed a foundation, a bedrock.
And that foundation is, without a doubt, the blues.
You really can't talk about jazz without talking about the blues.
Not at all. It is the single most important foundation. If you want to get the emotional heart of jazz, you have to understand where the blues came from first.
It started with work songs and spirituals, sung by enslaved people in the rural South.
And these weren't just songs, they were stories. They expressed such deep feelings of sadness and pain, but also this powerful sense of hope, of community, of survival.
So when those vocal traditions met actual instruments, that's when the blues scale was born.
That's it. It's what gives the music that deeply soulful, emotional quality that just resonates with everyone.
But that raises a question for me. How does the blues provide a structure? Improvisation sounds like total chaos, but there have to be rules.
Yeah, exactly right. And the blues provided the rule book. Most jazz, even today, still relies on something called the 12-bar blues structure.
12-bar blues.
Think of it like a simple template, like a 3-line stanza in a poem. Every musician knows how long the musical idea is supposed to last. 12 measures.
So they can improvise like crazy within that box because they know they all have this common ground to come back to.
You've got it. It's the skeleton of the song. It gives it its strength. And inside that skeleton, they found total freedom.
A great contradiction.
And jazz also took the emotional framework from the blues, especially this idea of a musical conversation called call and response.
Oh, yeah, I love
It's
this.
literally a conversation. A trumpet player might play a short phrase. That's the call.
And then the whole band, or maybe another soloist, answers it right back. The response.
Mm-hmm. That back and forth makes the music feel so intensely alive.
Okay, so we've got this vibrant, soulful music bubbling up in New Orleans, built on the blues. But how does it go national?
This is where the story takes a huge turn, and it's tied directly to one of the biggest demographic shifts in American history,
The Great
the
Migration.
Great Migration. In the early 20th century, huge numbers of African Americans began moving from the rural South to the urban North.
To big cities like Chicago and New York.
Right. They were leaving for better factory jobs, but also, crucially, to escape the brutal segregation and injustice of the Jim Crow South.
And where the people go, the music goes with them.
Of course, musicians realized there were bigger audiences, more opportunities, and eventually recording studios in the North. And this just transformed jazz from a regional thing into a national phenomenon almost overnight.
And the city changed the music, too.
It did. The faster, more frantic pace of city life led to a hotter, faster style of jazz. And those northern cities had the recording studios and radio stations.
So the music could be recorded, sold on records, and shared across the entire country. It became the soundtrack for a whole new era.
An era we now call the Jazz Age, the 1920s.
After the trauma of World War I, people, especially young people, were just looking for a way to celebrate and enjoy life.
They wanted new entertainment that felt nothing like their parents' generation.
And jazz was it. It was the most popular music. Energetic, liberating. It was played in dance halls everywhere, and it challenged all those stuffy old traditions.
This is the era that made musicians like Louis Armstrong into global superstars.
Yeah. A total genius. He basically invented the modern jazz solo, turning a simple melody into a platform for individual brilliance.
And new tech like radios and phonographs brought that brilliance into everyone's homes.
Which had this huge social effect, right? Because people from different backgrounds, black and white, were all enjoying the same music, dancing to the same tunes.
It started to break down some of those social barriers, but that unifying power stood in really sharp contrast to the reality of the country at the time.
Yeah, even as jazz became mainstream, America was still a deeply, deeply divided country, ruled by segregation laws.
The painful contradiction. Black and white musicians were often prevented from performing together. Some clubs would only allow white audiences, even if the brilliant musicians on stage, the people who invented the music, were African American.
And the discrimination they faced on tour was just intense. Separate hotels, separate restaurants.
The industry itself was segregated. Record labels created what they called race records, just to market music to black listeners.
Keeping the customer separate.
But here's where the music fought back. The sheer excellence of jazz, its complexity, it started to challenge those unfair social structures.
How so?
Well, white musicians who wanted to play at the highest level, they had no choice. They had to study and learn from the black masters.
So it created this cultural exchange that completely defied segregation.
It did, and that struggle was always just baked into the performance. Meanwhile, the music itself kept changing. By the 1930s, jazz morphed again into swing music.
The era of the big band.
Huge bands, sometimes 15, 20 musicians, massive sections of saxophones, trumpets, trombones, all anchored by a rhythm section.
And band leaders like Duke Ellington and Count Basie became these massive cultural icons.
Swing was designed for one thing, dancing.
In those huge ballrooms that were popping up everywhere, the arrangements were way more complex than the early New Orleans jazz.
Oh yeah, it was like a highly structured orchestra. The sections of instruments would have these call and response conversations with each other.
So musicians often had to read written music, but those amazing improvised solos were still a huge part of it.
They were essential.
Yep.
And the rhythm section kept that powerful, driving swing beat going, perfect for dances like the Lindy Hop.
And you have to think about the time period, the 1930s. This was the Great Depression. Life was incredibly hard for millions of families.
And swing music served a vital role. It was just so uplifting. It provided this necessary escape, a dose of optimism when people needed it most.
But as the music got bigger and more commercial, a new generation of musicians in the 1940s started to feel a little Constrained.
They felt the art was getting too polished. They wanted
Oh,
to push the boundaries again.
and that's where bebop comes in.
A dramatic, intentional shift.
Yeah, imagine going to a dance hall and suddenly the music is so fast, so complicated, with these jarring harmonies that you just can't dance to it.
You're not supposed to. It's meant only for listening. Bebop had these incredibly fast tempos and complex chord changes that demanded unbelievable technical skill.
And the leaders, like Charlie Parker on sax and Dizzy Gillespie on trumpet, they focused on really small groups.
It's just 4 or 5 musicians.
Yeah.
This allowed for long, intricate, blisteringly fast solos that sounded almost impossible to play.
And this movement, it really cemented jazz's status as a high art form. People started to view it in the same way they viewed classical music.
It was a clear statement. Jazz wasn't just entertainment. It was serious, complex art.
And while we talk about these male band leaders and soloists, we have to talk about the vital role women played from the very beginning.
Absolutely. They were incredible performers, singers, pianists, composers.
Singers like Ella Fitzgerald and Billie Holiday totally changed what it meant to be a vocalist.
They weren't just singing lyrics. They used their voices like an instrument, improvising these complex melodies, matching the brilliance of the best horn players. Ella Fitzgerald's scat singing.
It's basically vocal improvisation. Unbelievable.
And during World War II, when many men were away fighting, all-female bands became popular, proving their extraordinary talent.
But they always had to fight harder for respect in what was, and still often is, a male-dominated industry.
Their contributions were absolutely vital. And as the music matured into the 50s and 60s, it became deeply, deeply connected to the civil rights movement.
This is such a powerful connection. The very nature of jazz, this idea of individual expression within a collective group, it was seen as a metaphor.
It was a model of what democracy should sound like.
Individuals contributing their unique voice, listening to each other, and creating harmony together.
It wasn't just reflecting the fight for equality. It was musically demonstrating what true freedom and collective action could look like.
And musicians used their platforms fearlessly. They spoke out against injustice, they wrote songs referencing the freedom struggle.
And many refused to play in segregated clubs as a form of protest. They were activists on stage.
So jazz festivals and clubs, they became these important gathering places for activists and artists.
Exactly. The music helped change hearts and minds during one of the most difficult periods in American history. It proved that art could be a powerful tool for social justice.
Now, even with all this history rooted in America, jazz didn't stay here.
No, it spread globally very quickly during and after the World Wars. It reached Europe, Asia,
Where it became this symbol of freedom and democracy.
and 4 musicians embraced it. They adapted it. You saw new subgenres pop up like gypsy jazz in France. It just proved that jazz is a universal language that can reflect any local culture.
And today, you can find jazz clubs in almost every major city in the world. It's taught in universities as a serious academic subject.
Its legacy is just undeniable. The emphasis on creativity, on rhythm, on individual expression, it continues to influence everything you hear today, rock, pop, and especially the sampling and rhythmic complexity in hip-hop.
So what does all this mean for you?
I think the history of jazz is a powerful lesson in resilience. It shows how people can create something so complex and beautiful out of the most difficult circumstances.
It teaches us about teamwork, and maybe most importantly, about truly listening to each other to create harmony.
It's the ultimate example of turning pain into inspiring, lasting art.
We hope this gave you a new way to listen to your favorite tracks, and maybe even a reason to check out some Louis Armstrong or Charlie Parker. Good luck with your studies.